Now let's talk about Bill Clinton. Consider Israel's sexual blackmail of President Bill Clinton. A lot of you have never heard of this. Back in 1999, this is the year of Clinton's impeachment, the New York Post ran a story in which they talk about charges of Israeli blackmail efforts of Clinton. And the evidence supporting the claim was outlined by a British investigative journalist named Gordon Thomas. Thomas specialized in chronicling secret intelligence operations, secret activities by intelligence agencies, particularly the Israeli Mossad. So let me share some of what we know about this this blackmail of Clinton. Before the official impeachment investigation that was authorized by Congress got underway, what preceded that was that there were charges against Clinton, questions of unethical dealings, the Whitewater scandal, stuff like that. And so a special counsel had been appointed to look into Clinton. And it was in the course of that investigation that the Lewinsky stuff eventually came to the knowledge of the special prosecutor. Who was that special prosecutor? Kenneth Starr. And as an aside, interesting connection here, Kenneth Starr was later served as a personal attorney for Jeffrey Epstein down in Palm Beach. Ken Starr was one of his dream team attorneys who helped to get him that infamous sweetheart plea deal. So anyway, the special prosecutor who went after Clinton, Ken Starr, was an attorney for Epstein. Well, Starr, during his investigation, he deposes a bunch of witnesses in private. One of them was Monica Lewinsky. We don't have the videotape of that, at least not publicly, but we do have a transcript of the deposition. So in Monica Lewinsky's sworn testimony, she said that she and Bill Clinton were not only having sexual relations, not intercourse, but, oral sex, different kinds of, and other things. They were not only having physical relations at the White House, but they were also engaging in frequent and extensive phone sex. Up until a certain point, the point at which they stopped doing the phone sex stuff was when, and this is according to Lewinsky, Bill Clinton told her that he had learned that both he and Lewinsky, their phone lines, had been bugged. Lewinsky's 2 phone lines at her apartment and him at the White House. And that a foreign embassy had acquired, through this surreptitious means, had acquired 30 hours of their private phone calls, including a whole lot of this sex talk between them. So Clinton is telling this to her, and Lewinsky testified that Clinton came up with a cover story with her that she should use in case any of this information leaked, and she was, approached by reporters. Let me read you part of the transcript from the Lewinsky deposition. Question: was there a conversation on March 29th of 1997 when the president told you he thought perhaps his telephone conversations were being tapped or taped by a foreign embassy? Lewinsky answers yes. And was there some reference to start some sort of cover story? Lewinsky, yes. And she goes on to, I won't read the rest. She goes on to explain that after this point, she and Clinton stopped having the phone sex, but they did continue to have regular phone calls, just not dirty ones. Now, for whatever reason, and I think this is curious, Kenneth Starr, when he learns this from Lewinsky, he doesn't pursue the matter further, and that's quite different from how Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller handled things. When Robert Mueller, and it was part of the mandate given to Mueller, if he came across any other crimes in the process of investigating the Russiagate stuff, he was to pursue that information as well. In the case of Ken Starr, he learns from Lewinsky that President Clinton says that a foreign embassy had bugged the White House and had sexual compromise on him. But Ken Starr didn't pursue it. That's astonishing. In any other context, it would just make no sense why you would have a special prosecutor who purposely avoids pursuing an investigation into which foreign power was illegally spying on the U.S. president, or at least turning that over to the right party to conduct that investigation. But when you put this in the context of Kenneth Starr being an ally of Jeff Epstein, who is believed to be an asset of the Israeli Mossad, well, Starr's curious lack of interest in the subject of Israel spying makes a little more sense, doesn't it? Ken Starr. I wouldn't trust him to walk my dog. Now, fortunately, investigative journalist Gordon Thomas and other investigative journalists, they did pursue the matter that Ken Starr wouldn't touch. So what Thomas learned was that the individual responsible for the wiretapping of the president, or who had ordered the wiretapping of the president and Lewinsky, was the Mossad Inspector General, Danny Yatam. Through the wiretap, the Mossad had amassed 30 hours of damning material between Clinton and Lewinsky. And like I said, a lot of it was very sexually explicit. Thomas wrote a book, and it was entitled Gideon's Spies, Mossad's Secret Warriors, in which he explains how Israel utilized that material. At the time, Israel, this is going back to the 80s and 90s, at this time, Israel had a high-level mole who was deep within the White House, who was part of a multi-person spy ring inside the U.S. national security establishment. The particular Israeli agent that they were looking for, or at least what they identified him as, was Mega. The way that the United States learned about the existence of Mega was that the NSA had intercepted a phone call between an Israeli diplomat operating out of the Israeli embassy there in Washington, D.C., talking to Danny Yatam, the head of the Mossad over in Israel. They intercept this phone call. Well, the diplomat is heard on this in this phone call asking the Mossad for permission to, quote, go to Mega to get a particular confidential letter that had been intercepted. And the specific letter was actually correspondence between Bill Clinton's Secretary of State and PLO, or Palestinian Authority Chairman Yasser Arafat. So the letter was kind of a big deal at the time. Lots of negotiations were going on in the late 90s between Israel and the Palestinians. So the diplomat asked for permission. Yatam says no. Here's the quote. He says, "This is not something we use Mega for." Okay, so the Justice Department and the FBI and the CIA teamed up. And that's saying something, because the FBI and the CIA hate each other. They have serious rivalry. But they teamed up to try and find the members of this spy ring. So the Mega espionage cell had ties to another group which you may have heard about. Around 20 or so Jewish billionaires. These are so-called philanthropists. And they're known colloquially as the Mega Group. The Mega Group. And if you've heard about the Mega Group recently, it's probably because Whitney Webb of Mint Press has written some articles about Mega Group. And the Mega Group, though, this story about the Mega Group and these men, it's not that we're just now learning about them. These stories about the Mega Group go back to the late 90s. but you don't hear about it because the Zionist-controlled media hides it from they suppress it. Criticism of Israel and Israeli espionage gets suppressed. But information about Mega Group has been around for about 2 decades now. A good source of information is LaRouche PAC. They published some excellent work on not just the Mega Cell, the espionage ring, but also the Mega Group, the Jewish billionaires. And I think it was in 2001 that they put out some of these reports. Now, someone else who talked about some of this was Lisa Miller, who was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. She dug in and she published all the way back in 1998 about Mega Group. And she wrote that it was founded in 1991 by 2 people whose names you may have heard. One is Charles Bronfman of the notorious mafia family, and the other guy who helped to found it was Leslie Wexner. And Wexner, you may recall, is the man who Jeff Epstein was managing billionaire Les Wexner's money and doing a lot of dirty stuff with it. Now, I don't want to get sidetracked. I could go on and on and on about Mega Group, but I don't want to do that tonight. I'll just say that Mega Group is connected to the actual Mossad spy ring that was operating as far back as the 80s. A group of spies, like I said, that few Americans have heard about, but they ought to. They ought to. All right, so Les Wexner was the Victoria's Secret guy. The Limited and some other, popular shopping mall stores. But yeah, Victoria's Secret. Now, this Israeli Mossad spy ring, the Mega Cell, they had one intelligence agent who worked, an American, U.S. citizen, named Jonathan Pollard. And Albert had mentioned at the beginning of the show, Pollard. So Pollard had been busted in the 80s spying for Israel. Pollard was an intelligence analyst. I think he was Navy intelligence. But anyway, he got caught passing on to Israel, selling to Israel, a lot of top secret classified information. And among the stuff that Pollard was passing on to Israel was, important stuff. It had the methods and the processes that the CIA and the NSA used to gather intelligence. In fact, he gave them, the NSA had a 10-volume manual on how the United States gathers signal intelligence. And he gives this 10-volume instruction manual to Israel. So this is like serious stuff. Israel's not just like, oh, you got to get interesting information. They are going right to the heart of the U.S. intelligence and defense establishment. I mean, this is what you do when you are an enemy. You don't do this to an ally. You do this to your enemies. Remember that. On the outside, Israel will talk like they're friends with the United States. Is a parasite the friend of the host that they are killing? No, Israel is not our friend. Remember that. We have no greater enemy in the world than the state of Israel. So anyway, Pollard is giving all this stuff on the USA to Israel, and he gets caught. But he justifies what he's doing. Here's what he said in his testimony, quote, "The American intelligence establishment collectively endangered Israel's security by withholding crucial information." And so that's his excuse for why he is justified in spying for Israel. Well, anyway, the evidence against him was overwhelming. He pled guilty. He had no choice but to plead guilty. And he was sentenced to life in prison. Now, this was very, very disturbing to Israel. Why? Because Pollard, like Jeff Epstein, Pollard had secrets. In Pollard's case, he had knowledge of the identity of other members of the Israeli spy ring that were embedded in the U.S. Establishment. So to try to get him out, to try and gain clemency for Pollard, Israel gave Pollard Israeli citizenship. They made him an Israeli citizen and then petitioned the U.S. government to turn this Israeli citizen over to Israel. Look, he's an Israeli. Give him to us. That's how they work. So Israel went so far as to, I mean, they knew that they had been busted. And so they're trying to appease the United States. They're trying to gain the favor of the United States. So they come clean and they acknowledge that Pollard had been spying on the USA for Israel. And in 1998, Israel actually gave a formal public apology in the process of trying to persuade the USA to release Pollard. Now, what else did they do to keep Pollard? So they're trying to get him released, but until that happens, they had to keep him satisfied somehow. So they knew that the CIA and others are going to be trying to grill this guy and get him to spill secrets on the Israeli spy ring. So to keep him quiet, there were reports that over the years, Israel was paying Pollard and Pollard's ex-wife to keep their mouths shut. So they keep trying to get him released. All of their efforts failed. That is up until 2015. In 2015, Jonathan Pollard's life sentence for espionage was commuted and they released him from prison. And immediately, as soon as they released him, the Israeli Knesset, their parliament, they introduced a bill to allocate money to pay for Pollard's health care, to pay for his housing, and to give him a monthly stipend, basically a salary, for the rest of his life. Now, the bill was controversial, and it ended up being withdrawn because Benjamin Netanyahu wanted it withdrawn, not because he didn't want him paid off, but probably so that the Mossad could just funnel the money, the hush money to Pollard under the radar to avoid the public appearance of the government of Israel paying hush money to an American traitor. You know, that's not good diplomacy. Now, skip forward 2 years. In 2017, Netanyahu was still advocating for Pollard. He met with Vice President Mike Pence in 2017 to try and get, because Pollard, even though he had been released, there were certain parole restrictions on him. So Netanyahu met with Mike Pence to try and get these restrictions lifted, arguing that Pollard didn't pose any more risk and whatever. So they're trying to keep this guy happy. Now, I have given some context here for Israel's concern over their spies and the lengths to which they will go to try and protect their assets. So let's go back now for just a minute to 1998, 1999, and the Clinton-Lewinsky phone call sex tapes. By 1999, Pollard was in prison. He had been working as a handler for some of these other spies, and knew the identity of whoever this mega person is. So to stop the U.S. intelligence community from finding these other spies, Israel's Committee for Central Intelligence held an emergency session during which they sit there, Mossad is there, Netanyahu's there, they sit there and they listen to some of these sex tapes. They listen to President Bill Clinton having phone sex with Monica Lewinsky. I would not like to be in the room during that, but that's just me. So they listen to this stuff. Gordon Thomas, the investigative journalist, he's not the only one who talked about this, who wrote about this. There were additional details on this whole blackmail scheme that are found in Daniel Halper wrote a book. The name of that one was Clinton Incorporated, The Audacious Rebuilding of a Political Machine. So Halper, I think he wrote for the Weekly Standard. I might be wrong about that. I think it was the Weekly Standard. But anyway, Halper used on-the-record interviews to write his book. These were interviews with former officials who discussed Israel's use not only of the phone call sex tapes, but there were other records, hundreds of pages of records on the Clinton-Lewinsky affair, and they called these records the Monica files. The documents indicate that in 1998, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu used the phone call sex tapes and the Monica files to indirectly threaten President Bill Clinton. Netanyahu was in, like I said earlier, this was a time, the late 90s, there was a whole lot of negotiation going on between the Palestinians, Yasser Arafat, and Netanyahu and Israel. Netanyahu was in Maryland participating in the Y Plantation talks with the Palestinian Authority. Bill Clinton was kind of the mediator. At one point during the conference that they're having, Netanyahu spoke privately with Bill Clinton. And during that, he revealed to Clinton that Israel was in possession of these sex tapes. Now, remember, at this point, Bill Clinton is still out there denying everything. I did not have sex with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I need to get back to work. Leave me alone. This is a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. I love it when presidents say it's a witch hunt. When they say it's a witch hunt, you know, doggone it, it's probably true. So, but this is not out in the open yet. So this is very unsettling for Bill Clinton. It gives Netanyahu a whole lot of leverage over Clinton. So to soften the threat, though, because Netanyahu doesn't want to, come right out and say, if you don't do this, then I'm going to release these tapes. What Netanyahu tells Bill Clinton is, we've got these tapes. We listen to them. We know what's on them. We've got 30 hours. We destroyed the tapes. We just want you to know we destroyed the tapes. Now, of course, Bill Clinton, nobody, least of all Bill Clinton, was going to believe that Israel had so much compassion, so much love and morality and friendship that they would go and take the most damning compromise on the president and just destroy it out of the goodness of their hearts. But that's what Netanyahu said. Now, Halper wrote also that while Netanyahu was telling Clinton about the existence of these tapes, at that same time, Netanyahu asked Clinton to arrange for Pollard to be released from prison. And what does this remind you of? I'll tell you what it reminds me of. Netanyahu saying, we got these tapes, but we destroyed them, but I need you to do me a favor, though. I need you to release Pollard. Kind of sounds like, hey, I know you guys are wanting this $400 million in military aid, but I need you to do me a favor, though. Look into Burisma and gather some dirt on the Bidens for me. Sounds awfully similar. But anyway, up until this point, it's important to know that Bill Clinton, the issue of Pollard was kind of a big deal in the 90s. It was in the news. Bill Clinton had strongly objected to any efforts by Israel during the first 6 years of his presidency. He had objected to efforts by Israel to release Pollard. He wouldn't do it. But after that meeting with Netanyahu, let me read you what the New York Times wrote. New York Times wrote, quote, "The Israelis had told the president something that opened up the possibility of Pollard's release, something Clinton had explicitly ruled out during the first 6 years of his presidency." Now, they didn't say it was the sex tape stuff because they didn't know. All they knew at that time was, for some reason, just like with Donald Trump, where he's strongly one way and then a phone call or a meeting with Netanyahu and then boom, flips. That's exactly what the New York Times was writing about. Something opened up the possibility of Pollard's release, something Clinton had explicitly ruled out. And yet That's what Clinton did. He reversed his position. And he went to Clinton didn't have the power to just go and say, all right, I'm unilaterally letting this guy out. Because there was so much, I mean, the CIA and the FBI, this would have been like seen as the biggest slap in the face ever to them, to go and free the enemy. Kind of like how Republicans, I guess, are saying Trump's betrayal of the Kurds or something, but worse. So what Clinton did was he went to the CIA director, who was George Tenet, and he says, listen, I need you to help get Pollard out of prison. Tenet said, I won't do it. And if you free Jonathan Pollard, this American traitor, I will resign as CIA director. That would have raised all kinds of questions. A high-level resignation like that, the media would jump all over it. Why? Why did he do it? So Clinton can't have that. You can't have Tenet. So he pushed a little more, but he never got it done. He tried. But Clinton's spokesman, his White House spokesman, said, here's the reason that the spokesman gave for why Clinton had flipped. He said that the president was, quote, newly impressed by the force of Mr. Netanyahu's arguments on behalf of Pollard. Newly impressed by Netanyahu's arguments on behalf of this American traitor who spied for Israel. So this is an example of how Israel used sexual blackmail against a sitting U.S. president in a way that damaged U.S. national security. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if Israel has sexual blackmail on Donald Trump. Perhaps they have some other form of blackmail, like financial blackmail or something. But what I do know is that Donald Trump has spent his presidency doing the bidding of a foreign country, and it doesn't make sense.